very hard to find, let's say, a legendary artist. It's very hard to find. You're not going to find another Ray Charles just walking around. You're not going to find another Adele just walking around. Those people don't just walk around. That's a gift that's been crafted. It's been mentored. It's been through things. It's like a diamond. It's been hardened, right? But it's very easy to find someone in today's world that is willing to do things for shock, for money. That's a very easy thing to find. I mean, you can literally throw a piece of gum out a window in Los Angeles and you'll hit someone who's willing to do something shocking for money. So a lot of times what people do is they find artists who are willing to do shock. They make some songs that have no real resonance, but they sound good. And then the song gets out there. The artist does a bunch of things to get on headlines because it's less about the music, more about the visual. And then after 5 or 6 years, they forget about them and they just find someone else. Well, you can't do that with an Adele. That you can't do that with a Ray Charles. It's like if 6 years go by, if you can't find one, it might be hard to find another one of those. So I think the industry has turned more into how do we keep the lights on, and that's more about creating buzz rather than how do we create amazing music and art that gets us spread around the planet. And because that shift has happened in the intention of what they're looking for, it's kind of skewed the direction of where listeners even go to hear things.
Yeah, I mean, I've been noticing over the last 20 years that music has, in my mind, just gone downhill, like at least what's out there. And then through meeting you guys and other people that are also interested in conscious music, I actually started to like really look deep around the world for independent artists and actually found the exact opposite. In the last 20 years, there's this huge explosion of independent artists that are using, social platforms and YouTube and stuff like that, Spotify, whatever streaming services to get their art out there. And there's actually some really incredible things going on. So it seems like there's this divergence happening where like real art is starting to, catch on again. And it's edgy, it's out there, it's unique, it's very interesting. And then there's like this pop world that it seems like in the last 15 years has just gotten like one step worse, kind of like you're saying, hunting the money. For you, what are like the really positive things that you actually see taking place today in entertainment and music, and who's part of that, and how is that kind of taking shape?
I think it's really just a runoff of what you just said. There's this emergence or this divergence of people who are staying true to their art and finding genuine fans who enjoy it. So for instance, I have friends who aren't signed to major labels, they aren't signed to major publishers, they have no songs on the radio, but they have 500,000 plays on Spotify a month. So they're able to afford a pretty good living just by their streaming side, and then they also go on tour and they get paid really well on tour. So they're able to provide a really good existence through music. And I think a big part of that comes from all of the movies regarding music have the same plot. And so when someone gets into music for attention, to fill a void, and not because they feel like it's a genuine passion of theirs or a gift. The minute I change the pay scales for musicians, you'll see how many people would actually quit. So if I told someone, for instance, you can't make $1 million in music, you're going to make the same amount that a doctor makes, so you'll make 6 figures. The amount of musicians who would say, oh, I don't want that then, because doctors aren't famous. Doctors aren't known. The average doctor down the street is not well known around the world. If I take away the attention, if I take away the money, so many people would just quit music altogether because they're not in it for making music. But for the people who actually have an intention to make great music and leave great art behind, that kind of person can make a living nowadays more so than ever before in history. And it's out there with these platforms. Now, there's going to be a barrier to entry, which means you might have to do more songs because there's less promotion. You might have to build it up for more years. You might have to find that niche marketplace. But once you do, they tend to kind of connect. So the fans of this kind of music most likely will like your music, and that it kind of has this thread. So yeah, I see that more happening. And I think the next level of that will be, there's no container for it yet. So there's that major record label side that has a container for it where they house the artists. They have a full creative services, management, producers, A&R, marketing, touring. I mean, it's a full list of services that a label does. And a lot of these independent artists don't have that. So what tends to happen with them is that they're doing it all on their own, and they do get burnt out after a certain period of time because they don't have booking agents that are doing all the work for them, because the booking agent is trying to make $30,000 a gig on the big artist rather than $5,000 a gig from the conscious artist. So until there's this sort of container of people that realize I rather be working over here for my, let's say, karmic duty in a sense, like I'd rather be over here and I can still make money. I might not have a mansion, but I'll still be able to make a good living and I'll be able to support something that I think is actually positive for this planet. Well, I think once that happens, that container will start to open up, more people will start to switch, and there'll be more of a balanced playing field. And I think that'll happen over the next 5-10 years.
Are you seeing that already in the music industry? That there's like different places in the world maybe emerging, or different kinds of labels that are being creative to try to provide this kind of extra support to independent artists?
I see it, but it's still very, very, very minimal. It's still, because usually what happens is the people who have a lot of connections, a lot of, let's say, quote unquote, networking power, they tend to stay where they make the most amount of money. So for them to then shift over and then use that, it doesn't really happen as much. And for the people who are building it in that world, it takes time to have enough of that infrastructure. So it's still in this movement where it's there. I see things popping up here and there. And that's the reason why I say when I look at it, I think it's kind of like the Wild West in the best way for artists like this, because this is the time where record labels or people who can see what's happening and go, wait a second, I've made some money, I have my connections, but something doesn't feel right in what I'm doing, because there's 12-year-old kids who are now more depressed, getting involved with more things that are going to be sabotaging themselves, higher anxiety, higher suicide, higher addictions. And a lot of it's coming from the media, which is the medium of that information. So why am I doing this just so I can have a big house? And once they start to go over here, which I think they will, and I've met several people in the music industry, usually after they spend time with us out here or other places, where they have a moment of clarity. And from that moment of clarity, they go, wait a second, what am I doing? And I think it just takes time to build a community of those people.
So when you say what you guys are doing out there, what are you doing out there?
Yeah,
Where are
right.
you? Where are you and what
Yeah.
are you doing? And when did you decide to start doing something different?
So I'm not going to give my exact location, but so we live in the jungle in Costa Rica, and what we do in the, I guess, a short form without going too deep, is we provide a really in-depth way of resetting the human condition out of its program to self-sabotage. And in that, we allow the part that comes forward, which is usually a large part of creativity and beauty and love and community, we allow that to have a place to not only be supported, but to have to capture and to grow. And when I say capture and grow, like as meaning we have a recording studio that's high end. We have a beautiful retreat center. We have a great facilitation team and people who are leading it and people who are invested for a lifelong. This isn't a let's see what this does. This is not how we operate. This is a lifelong that we'll pass along to our children, our children's children. So in a sense, almost like a reboot system, but in that reboot system, it gives you a chance to, for artists and for creative types. And we have doctors who come out here from Harvard and Yale and people who are involved in different medicines and spiritual practices and a lot of different things that we've been able to see. But basically we're kind of like an incubator for what I believe can be a new way of harmonizing on this planet. And music is a big part of that.